I'm Brian Cooley. Thanks for having me in. I don't think I've spoken to this group before this particular conference, so it's a pleasure to be in front of you all. Great bunch here. As Nancy mentioned, I really focus a lot on car tech at CNET, but I cover all the other verticals pretty much at a top level, so I try and connect those dots together. What I'm going to do in the next few minutes, very quickly here, is just give you a survey of what's going on, what's bubbling up in connected car technology, so you know what to look for in the next year to 18 months, which is going to be a big ramp up of a lot of these technologies. And the key thing they're doing is they're opening up the car as the last untapped user place. All of you are able to put your media into just about all our other places, except when I'm in the shower, and even there, if I got a waterproof cover on my iPad, you can reach me. Home, office, mobile, on the go, everywhere, but the car has remained a digital ghetto where everything else kind of breaks and we go to like CDs, iPod playback, AM, FM radio for the most part for most consumers. So I'm going to show you how we're going to break down the wall to the last big user place. The background, though, of how we got here is very interesting. This all started off, of course, in really this digital era in 1981 with the personal computer. The next big lump was the cell phone. The next big lobe after that was consumer web, 1994, very busy time there. And the last major lobe of this is the smartphone. I call these the four horsemen that got us where we are. I don't count a lot of other major innovations in consumer relationship with media, aside from these four, in the digital era. This is really a very condensed snapshot of how we get now to what's happening with cars. This is the after the PC era that we're in right now. And it doesn't mean the PC goes away by any stretch. It means that it's no longer at the top of the pyramid and everything kind of flows down from it. There's a lot of sort of sharing of the stage now with the PC. And the four new categories, the new four horsemen, are in order of maturity, I think, are the smartphone, the tablet, the connected TV, and the most green, but the most interesting, and the one that opens up a completely new user place, is the connected car. This is where we're going, and these all have a few things in common. All those new platforms that come post-PC have three things in common. They're transparent, they're intimate, and they're intuitive. If you're trying to grasp how are these things all tied together, that's what's different. It's not touchscreen, it's not processor, it's not long battery life or mobile. Those are details. Consumers aren't buying tech products on those anymore. They're not buying specs, they're not buying weight, they're not buying battery life. That's all secondary once they buy into the bigger concept, which is transparent, intuitive, intimate. They don't put it in those words, but that's the buttons that these four new technologies are pressing. Now, ecosystems, I'll give you a quick blast on this because everyone's got their take on ecosystems. Here's mine. I work on this a lot. I think this is a pretty good representation. At the base, you've got devices. I make this a big, round, sort of a slow-turning disk because these aren't going to be innovating as fast as what stacks on top of them that I'm about to show you. These are static, not static, these are stable. Count on them to be here for the long-term categories, the four I just showed you that come post-PC. Highly above those are, what's interesting again, operating systems. No one saw this coming, at least not a couple, 3 years ago. OSs were kind of like, whatever, they all do the same thing. Files, network stack, bunch of stuff that just makes a computer work. But now operating systems are interesting again because they're distinct, they've got unique flavors, they have unique hassles you have to deal with, you got to make bets on them, you didn't have to before. We had Mac and Windows, they all had browsers, who cares, they all work the same. Well, now you've got to make bets and you got to worry about them again. That's why they're back in the game. But the really important stuff, as I'm sure you know, are the services that can be unique or semi-unique to the operating systems above them and sometimes to the devices below them. The middle part is where the action's going on right now, and I know that's where most of you are focusing. That's where the transparent, intuitive, and intimate actually hits the road, is how those services answer what I want to do, not how those devices at the bottom sell me on their specs. That's no longer the top line. Although, caveat to that, consumers do get initially interested in new experiences by seeing a shiny gadget. They still have that key role, but they quickly now assess the experience of it. Not, is that the best amount of CPU and hard drive for my money? That's the old computer days. The cloud. Quick note on the cloud, because I know a lot of us are coming at it from different directions right now, seeing companies like Google and Apple and Amazon. They've all got a different take on the cloud. I could do half a day on that alone, but let me give you a quick one. The cloud is very simple. It's the idea of taking the state of a device out of the device and putting it on the internet. State means the data and the software. That's what state is. That's why your computer is different than yours, different than yours, different than yours. No two of us, even if we have the identical model of Dell laptop running Windows 7, they're completely different machines because we've loaded different crumb trails, different data, and different software on them. That's what makes them wonderful. It also is what makes them so difficult to maintain and live with sometimes because they're so different, each unit. The cloud pushes all of that stuff, all the stuff that you care about on your computing device, out to the internet, and your device becomes a relatively thin, relatively dumb piece of hardware. That's why I don't get so excited about the hardware these days as I might have 2 or 3 years ago. It's moved to the cloud, it's moved to the experience. Now let's bring it down to cars. Connected cars use a lot of cloud technology in different ways for 5 major areas. This is where I'm going to start to give you this look at what you're going to expect to have in cars that's going to give you places to do what you do, whatever part of the media picture you're in. Here are the 5. Communication, navigation, entertainment, telematics, and autonomy. Autonomy might be the kind of the outlier here. That's the idea of getting cars that are doing more and more of the driving for us. We're maybe 10 years away from self-driving cars technically. We're probably 20 or 30 away from self-driving cars socially. But self-driving cars are real close right now, real easy to do, very reliable. Google's got a bunch of them that drive around here in Nevada. They haven't had a crash yet, only when the humans take over. They've had 2 crashes, both when the humans were driving. The computers have never had a wreck. Volkswagen, same thing. Audi in the lab in Silicon Valley. They have cars that just drive around. They know where each other are. They can do their own driving. But that's kind of outside the sphere of media. So I'm going to focus on the first 4. Little detail on those functions. Communication means calling, Twitter, text, email, Facebook. I know a bunch of you right now are saying we're doomed. We're going to be doing all this behind the wheel. It's about doing it contextually, intelligently, with lots of great text-to-voice and voice-to-text, like you saw with Apple's new Siri technology. There's great stuff in the Android platform. Whether it's a car, a tablet, a phone, doesn't matter. We've got the power now to take and make things auto-contextual, safe, and responsive to the moment, which is what makes it responsible in the vehicle. That's communication. Navigation. Show me a map. Give me navigation. Give me turn by turn. Give me traffic. Let me search to get to a destination. Search is broken right now. If you have to bring a little Post-it note to your car and then punch in the address, that's not cool. You should be able to search from the car organically, then have ratings, relevance, media messages come up, and then make your decision on where I'm going to go, which is the usage of the vehicle. That's the right flow. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting there with this stuff. And I'm showing you a few examples of companies that are doing this, not an exhaustive list. Streaming audio and video, of course, is a great example of entertainment. Mostly in audio space right now. There has been a limited amount of specific streaming video to cars, but that's just a matter of bits and bandwidth. 4G will make that a lot more doable. Telematics, this is the stuff where you check, locate, and control your car automatically. With electric cars, you want to be able to charge them when you're not around. Check the charge state. Did I lock the car? You're sitting there on the plane, and you for some reason think you didn't lock your car, and it's sitting there in the airport parking lot for 5 days, and it's going to drive you crazy. You log on with your OnStar mobile app or your Ford mobile app, and you lock the doors, or check if they're locked. It's over IP, it's over the cloud. You can do it from across the globe, but it's easier when you're on the plane because you have less to worry about. And finally, autonomy, as I mentioned. Traffic, car to infrastructure, probably outside of the realm of what most of us are doing here. So now let's take a look at some of the players. This is all real stuff. I'm showing you in showroom or near showroom technology. From Cadillac's new Q interface in the upper left, there's my Ford and my Lincoln next to that. Upper right, BMW with Facebook, Twitter, web radio. It's been on the market since March. Any BMW with a manufacture date of March 11 on forward is compatible with that. Coming around the right side, you've got Toyota Entune, the new General Motors interface, and Hyundai BlueLink's about to come out on the new Hyundai Veloster. These are real products, connected technologies with apps you may recognize, some you don't, on showroom floors. So the day is here. Mark 2011 is the year that the connected car became real, affordable. The question is digestible and understandable. Here's some numbers on this stuff. 41 million connected cars by end of this year. The majority of those are telematically connected. Think OnStar. Think Mercedes-Benz TeleAid. Think Lexus Enform, things like that. Not exactly the heart of where I'm going. But where the growth is the 189 million connected cars just 5 years from now. That's where I'm talking more about the systems that you know on the internet now. Systems that will let you get to Facebook, Twitter, streaming media, search to nav, lots of Google services, that sort of thing. This is where the growth is going to be between those two numbers. 27 million connected navigation units alone in the market by 2016 shows the strong growth within that one particular function. Navigation is key. It's the purpose of a car more than anything else. You don't go sit in your car to listen to audio or watch something. You do it peripherally because driving is boring. But the car is about getting places. So always keep an eye on navigation and what's happening in connected nav first and foremost, because that goes to the very point of the vehicle's existence. The other things I'm showing you are somewhat peripheral. Not unimportant, but somewhat peripheral to that. Look at all these companies on that list there. From the auto business to the electronics business, they're all part of the Connected Car Consortium that was fostered by Nokia. That's an important group to watch. That's just about everybody who's in that game, and that's just one group. And finally, Ford recently announced they're going to develop a connected car standard with Toyota. I bring this up because you don't normally see standards between car makers unless they're enforced by government or regulation, usually. They're big on proprietary to a large degree. But this shows you that a lot of these car companies, and these two firms are among the sharpest in this, but not the only ones, understand that at some point that whole rising tide floats all boats, and we can differentiate our boats as opposed to our oceans. Very important thing to see the car industry get its head wrapped around, because they're still at the bubble where they could scrap this thing by being too proprietary. So that was an encouraging thing. It's still very green, that announcement. Now, here's a few examples. Toyota has a system called N-Tune. We got a little video clip I can show you on this we're going to run. I'm not going to actually roll these videos full up, but there is a link I'm going to share with you at the end of the presentation where you can find all these videos, so don't sweat that. This is a system that brings you 5 apps through your smartphone to the dash. It launched with the new Camry in July, so it's on market now. They're a little hard to see from where you are, but you've got Bing, iHeartRadio, which is Clear Channel Broadcasting, Pandora, you all know. Movietickets.com, you can research movies by location, by time, press to buy on the screen with a pre-established account, and then there's Open Table in there. They bring this all together through one app, so the user's not having to install apps. They install one app. It's called the Toyota N-Tune app on any of 3 smartphone platforms, BlackBerry, Android, iPhone, and then that brings these 5 apps in dynamically through the cloud. Very smart. For a mainstream user who has a Toyota and says, I don't want to sit here playing with a bunch of apps I'm going to install and maintain and get all those damn update notices. Toyota manages that, and it all comes down through one conduit. Also puts Toyota right in the middle of that user's behavior. That N-Tune app is aware of how they're using those apps. I don't know the details on how it is, but they are in the stream. They're not just saying, oh, go out and get an app and go ahead and connect it with some Bluetooth technology. They're in the stream of that app. Very good position to put them in. BMW's Connected Drive. Facebook, Twitter, and web radio they rolled out, as I mentioned, with their March manufacture date cars earlier this year on, I think, all the models. There might be 1 or 2 that are not yet supporting this. And you dock an iPhone in the console, and these functions get supported. And this is a very automotive-centric interface. You don't see the Facebook page. That is, that is Facebook showing up on the right there. Those are Facebook updates. They're in German, because this was in Geneva. But this is not Facebook. They've contextualized it to make it digestible, safe. Side note, there's a cultural difference in the auto business. Some of the manufacturers let you do stuff while you're driving, some don't. It's not so much a matter of legal teams differing, from what I can tell, but differences globally. The Germans let you do whatever you want. You can punch in anything. You know, they've got the Autobahn. What are they going to do? Suddenly lock out functions on the car? It's kind of crazy. The Asian companies go a different direction. They tend to lock out. The American cars tend to be kind of in the middle. They lock out some functions, but not aggressively as many as a lot of the Asian makers. So that's what I see going on right now. It's not a matter of there being one think on what you can allow to happen in the car or not. Something to know is you're forming partnerships. Some automakers are way more open to letting things happen while the car is underway than others. Audi's connected car. Notice the bottom right corner of this image. You see a Google logo and a 3G logo. This is shot in a car I reviewed that had no smartphone in it. So that's not a pairing situation. That's not a tethering. That's innate in the car, built in. The Google services are built in. The 3G radio, built into the car. You don't even need to own a cell phone for this to work. This was a breakthrough. Audi and BMW are the only car companies that are putting built-in 3G into their cars. Everyone else so far is tethering. You got to bring your smartphone, tether it to the car, and the car gets online through your phone. That's a good model too, but this I think is more aggressive and very interesting to watch. They're saying this has got to be an essential part of a vehicle. Without this, the car is kind of incomplete is what they are now professing. So watch the German cars in that respect there. And you can see the functions that you get through Google is Google Search. They pull in some Wikimedia images to show you local landmarks so you can identify a building on screen so you'll know when you're driving to it or by it. Helps you get context on top of all that sort of photorealistic mapping that Audi's also doing now. They pull in a 30-square, I think it's a 30-mile radius of Google Earth imagery on their nav system now on several of their cars. And this video will also be in the link sheet, or the link page I'll send out to you. So you can actually be looking at Google Earth as you drive. It's no longer just the drawn interface. It's the photorealistic database. Very interesting stuff. Remote control in cars. On the left, you have OnStar Mobile. On the right, you've got My Ford Mobile, going after the same idea, especially with electric cars, allowing you to check the charge state, check lock state, check the car's start state for extreme climates. You want the car to start early and cool off, or start early and heat up. For people that have got really rough weather, that's really important to them. Location and tracking, of course. Where's my car? You don't need to just call OnStar anymore. You can just pull your phone out, and your car's connected, your phone's connected. They meet up in the cloud, and they can talk to each other. GPS in the car tells the phone, here's where I am. RFID in the key says, here's who started me. You now basically know who's in the car and where it is without having to track the human who's driving it. A lot of stuff happens here rather easily because of smartphones and the power they have. And again, smartphone, tablet, laptop, doesn't really matter. It's about the software, the cloud, and the availability of all these peripheral technologies like Wi-Fi, GPS, and constant 3G inexpensively in many devices, from phones to cars. Pioneer App Radio is one to watch. This is the first of its kind that is basically a dumb box that gets all of its functionality from your iPhone. This will be a significant trend. It already is. It's part of what we call the mechless revolution. Mechless means the mechanical part of the car stereo is getting gutted. The CD drive, it's the heaviest, most expensive, most likely to break part of a car stereo. And it's getting used a lot less. So that comes out, and it's basically a screen and an amplifier to put out the sound through the speakers. And it gets everything from the iPhone for the most part. It has built-in AM/FM radio and Bluetooth for pairing. That's about it. Beyond that, it relies on your iPhone, or it's kind of nothing but a basic radio. It's so simple that it doesn't really have this need to be up on current technology. It gets it from the phone. It stays relevant automatically by being a slave to the apps that are evolving so quickly. Big trend. MirrorLink, Nokia sponsored, but many companies are on it. This is that connectivity consortium I showed you a few slides ago with all those different companies. This is the other effort going on to say, when I get in the car and I connect my smartphone or other device, why does the display look so different? Why do I lose my iPhone display when it goes up on the screen? It becomes a completely different display that may not be very good, because very few companies are as good at doing interface as Apple. So why do I have to let go of that? Well, MirrorLink, iPod Out, and a couple other technologies are striving now to say, yes, it's time to echo the device's interface that you use all day into the car, shaped enough differently to make it, again, responsible, contextually digestible, and all the things that make it a little better in the car, but not completely different, not blowing it up so it suddenly becomes the automaker's interface. It stays mostly the device's interface. So watch MirrorLink, because as you're trying to place media into future car platforms, you want to have a consistency where you develop for the mobile and have that show up relatively faithfully on the dash. It'll save you a lot of headaches. And these initiatives, like MirrorLink, iPod Out, and there's one in the Android community that's just bubbling up now, will be important efficiency tools and platforms to get consumers to use these more, because they like what's familiar. Consumers aren't real big on learning curves. They're not stupid, they're just busy. Let's take a look at this. This is the new Tesla Model S. It's the new Tesla that'll be coming out to compete with basically a 5 Series or a Lexus GS. And we got a sneak peek at this a couple weeks ago down at their plant. But one of the most interesting things I saw was this new dashboard. That is a huge screen on the right. It's like, I don't know, like 10 or 11 inches long, 7, 8 inches wide. It's basically pushing everything into on-screen interface. Think of what that can do in the future as this stuff matures. And this is coming on market next year. That you're going to have the ability to do a full screen interface. You can do anything when you have screen real estate, as you know. It's much better than having fixed buttons for media people. For the car, I have my doubts that too few buttons is happening here. I don't want everything in my car to be a touch button. And as you can see, just about everything in this vehicle is. And the instrument panel to the left, which you can't see, the gauges, those are also LCD. This car is almost all LCD. There may be a point where that gets pushed too far for a car to be really satisfying to control, but I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt and see how they push the envelope at Tesla to say, let's get really screen-based interface into vehicles and get them on the market 2012, 2013. little bit of data here, a little hard to read from the back, but I'll summarize for you. This is great stuff from Arbitron, Edison, and Scarborough. They do really interesting stuff around radio and media. This shows what we use in cars at the top. It's AM, FM radio, CD, cell phone. Those are your big three. That's what we use. And then a lot of other new technologies are very small at the bottom in those red bars. But look at what we love. Our passion is around sat radio, iPod, audiobooks, GPS, HD radio, Pandora. I haven't even gotten to radio yet. DVD player. Oh, AM, FM stream via cell phone. To get to radio, you have to go to the fourth from the bottom. CD, third from the bottom. So there's usage and passion in car media right now. They're very different. You'll hear a lot from the radio industry. Love the radio industry. I come from the radio industry about how in-car radio usage is barely dropped in all this technology onslaught. True. But passion for in-car radio usage is what I think is getting much more of a utility or of a background service, which can be an enviable place to be. But look at the passion around the new technologies. It's a complete inverse of the usage. That's where we're going. Phones, as you know, have taken over. If you don't know this, here's the most simple, stark graphic I can give you. 100.9 million smartphones sold in Q4 of 2010 worldwide compared to PCs at 92 million. This was the quarter that smartphones outsold PCs, and we're never going back. Smartphones are now the computer. The computer is now the second most popular computer in the world, and that's never going to change. Tablets in 2010 were a very small number, but look at tablets for 2011. Big growth still. We're a year or two away from even half of us carrying a tablet. Readers were really small in 2010. Big jump we'll see in 2011, and that's probably even a pre-Kindle Fire number. I point this out to show the strength of mobiles because they are largely what's going to be informing the experience in the car. What goes into the smartphone is why it's such a strong player in the car. The media player, that's in the smartphone now. The GPS unit, these guys are in horrible shape. That's in the smartphone now. Or it's in the car dash from the manufacturer. But who the hell buys a Magellan today unless it's just so cheap you can't say no, right? And finally, the portable video players like Flip, which pulled the plug, that went into the smartphone. You've got a 1080p HD, basically broadcast camera in your iPhone. This kind of convergence and the fact that good enough is good enough, yes, there are trade-offs to putting everything in the phone, but good enough is good enough, is what's powering this device that then wants to be in the car. Because I love it and use it in so many modes outside the car, I don't want to say goodbye just because I get in the vehicle. That's the thing we're trying to solve for here. So let me give you some key points to take away, and I'll take some questions from you. I know I'm blasting through a lot of stuff here. I just wanted to give you a taste of what to look for in the year ahead. Cars connect at 5 levels. These are the 5 to watch, the fifth one being probably the least of impact, but of interest. Communication, navigation, entertainment, telematics, that's the whole staying in touch with my car, control, location, things like that, and autonomy, that's self-driving cars. Ecosystems create the hits these days. I've said this a number of times here, I'm not as excited about devices as I was. I'm excited about experiences. The devices are iconic for the experiences. There's no two ways about saying people are looking at things like an iPad and saying, oh, I got some new ideas about how I can live. But the device is now just sort of a gateway drug, and it gets you into the behavior. And it's all about transparent, intuitive, and intimate. That's what consumers are responding to, even if they don't actually say that in those words. And we're unlocking new user places when we get the car digitalized and connected. Finally, we can reach people with media consistently across all the modes and moments of their life. So I'll take some questions now. Here's the link to the videos that I didn't play for you here. They're all in a list at my Facebook page. It's facebook.com/AskCNET. You're free to email me if you want to do it old school. And I'm on Twitter, Brian Cooley. So, any questions I can answer in a few minutes here?
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, guys.
I'm following hashtag iMedia Summit, and there are a lot of people in the audience who would actually like to go for a ride with you.
Yeah. My newest car was made in '88. I get so many new cars at work, I only drive vintage. So driving with me is actually a retro experience.
Hi, my name is John Lockman with Covell Fuller. I saw that you talked about App Radio, Mirror Link, and iPod App as a future. I'm thinking they don't push it far enough. I mean, for me, already, I just use my phone for navigation. I have a dock, and I kind of use that. I'm like, why aren't cars just pushing for, you know, and I'm not talking like in addition to this on-screen, it's a secondary screen. Like, eliminate the screen. I just want to put my Android tablet or my iPad app, and with their special proprietary app, kind of sort of connect to the car so that's not dangerous. But I'm just thinking, why not just push it all the way? Like, I don't want a separate screen. As greater innovations as like iPod out, MirrorLink, and Pioneer. Why not just, here's my iPod, connect to my car, and that's the only screen I want to see on my phone.
Two things going on. The smartphone, of course, is a little bit small, especially an iPhone. I mean, it's the smallest smartphone out there at this point, 3.5-inch screen, and also the most popular. Weird paradox there. So it's not enough real estate to really be a satisfying car experience if they give you a nice clip-in dock, and they exist. They're very niche-y products. The iPad, because the 7-inch tablets haven't had much traction, the 10-inch tablets reign, too big. No car maker is willing to give up that much of their center stack, of their experience, and give you this great big old blank place that'll dock any major tablet. They could do that. It's just a bunch of interchangeable plastic dock adapters. It wouldn't be hard at all. That's a matter of, hubris is the wrong word. It's a matter of pride by the automakers to say, no, we do still know a little something about how a car should portray itself to you. So as a result, they go this middle ground of saying, let's do a 7 or 8-inch, even bigger. We're seeing even bigger screens now. You saw that Tesla one, and really wide ones BMW does. And let's do a better job of translating what you already love on your device, so it's not quite totally foreign. But there's a lot of automaker ownership of that real estate. That's why it's taking a little longer to get that device to really be innate in there. I think we have one over here. Sir.
Brian, Dave Smith from Media Smith.
Yeah.
It seems to me that everybody's got like an iPhone connector. You say smartphone, but isn't it really, are we going to all have to buy iPhones in order to make it work with our car, or is there going to be some kind of universal connector?
Well, yeah, the big hassle here is that the Android is far and away the best-selling platform for smartphone, though the iPhone is the best-selling model of smartphone, because they're completely different animals. There's an iPhone, really. There's one main model at a time, and there's 8,000 Android phones, and they probably released 2 more while I was standing here. So the idea is, if you're going to ignore that enormously exploding Android market, why is that? Because the Android handsets don't have an interesting connector at the bottom. They have a micro USB, and that's it, which is very difficult to do a lot of things on simultaneously. Compared to that 30-pin Apple dock connector, that wide one, you can do a lot of things with that: video, audio, logic control, charging, and a few other things you can break out of that. GPS signals can come and go. You can interface that to the car through what's called the OBD port. This is the issue. The Android phones have hamstrung themselves with a universal connector, USB, that also restricts what they can do from it. There are a couple products now that'll translate your Android phone into an iPod connector in your car. They're a little wonky right now. Someone needs to do a better job on that. But unfortunately, the Android handsets have limited hardware connectivity. That's why they're going to have to rely on wireless. And again, go to the cloud. That kind of translates and puts everyone on the same sort of playing field. Instead of worrying about what connector I have, everything just go wireless. The car and the phone could actually meet in the cloud, as opposed to meeting in a connector in the dash. Another one here in the back, sir.
Carl Heberger, Tipping Point Media. I think shiny screens are very distracting, and text messages will be the death of all of us while people are driving. It's been outlawed in most states, I believe. So what do you think the government reaction will be to some of these connected cars?
The government reaction will depend on a couple of things. How well these automakers and electronics companies that I showed, particularly in that connected car consortium list, that's everybody basically, do about making this stuff safe and reliable. Those are two different things, but they both go to the same customer satisfaction. Secondly, it depends on certain administration trends. The dude who runs the Department of Transportation right now, Ray LaHood, despises this stuff, hates it. If he didn't have a bunch of other things to deal with, like the massive upswing that we're doing right now in the corporate average fuel economy and some other things going on with technology, with automotive, this would be his main complaint, and he'd be all over this. But at some point, I can tell you, I've driven a lot of vehicles that do Facebook and Twitter and this sort of thing. And think about if any of you have seen the demonstration of Apple's Siri on the iPhone 4S. That, to me, is a car technology. I'm not going to walk around or be on a plane or doing anything talking to my phone much. I just not. It doesn't make sense. People are still self-conscious about doing text-to-speech. One of the reasons it never took off on computers is not that it doesn't work. It works great on computers. But no one wants to sit in their office talking to the machine. And it gets real noisy when everyone's doing it. And then everyone's computer is hearing everyone else, and you get a lot of interference. It has all kinds of issues, except in the car, where speak to drive a device, a phone or a tablet, is brilliant. So to me, Siri is a car technology. I'm watching that for success more there than anywhere else. And that solves dramatically a system that is so natural language, so smart and so intuitive, that can solve a lot of issues with the distraction of the mind. And that's what makes cars dangerous. The hands and the eyes are a smaller issue than thinking about the situation. So yes, there's a lot of challenges there, but I think voice is the number one that will cure a lot of that. Here, sir.
Hi, Brian. Peter Sabo from Shazam.
Hi.
Love the new technology and kind of good to hear that they're working together behind
And I love
the scenes.
Shazam, so.
Cool. Good to hear. I'm curious on pricing. Obviously, we're already paying for the iPad connectivity, paying for the iPhone connectivity. Audi, I don't know if they're charging separately for that, but I know there's a consumer expectation that I'm already paying a ton. Is this worth the price? And are you seeing the same kind of working together behind the scenes too?
Yeah, I know BMW and I think Audi are doing something interesting on their connected cars. Both of them have built-in 3G on some or all of their models right now, some of their models. And as last time I checked, probably 2 or 3 months ago, BMW was saying the 3G is free for the first 3 years, and then we'll tell you what it's going to cost. Little odd. So I cannot tell you what Audi and BMW are going to charge for their service, at least not BMW. But we're getting to the era now where we pay for the same data over and over and over. That's a weird thing about this moment in history. We'll see if consumers have a backlash against that or if they end up just kind of grafting it in as that's the way it is. For years we've always known that when you take something free and put it on a mobile device, it suddenly doesn't need to be free. That transformation makes it have a price tag and a value different than it was on a computer, on the browser. That's the beauty of mobile. Maybe car goes the same way. I will pay again for a car-specific version of an app I already own. For car connectivity, even though I already have it on my smartphone, if it works better and if I perceive it to be better honed for that experience in the car. The jury's out on that, though, and there's a lot of repayment we're doing for a lot of things out there along the lines of data plans. Yes, sir.
Yes, Andrew Hopkins, JP Morgan Chase. There's a lot going on in sort of the mobile payment space. How do you see that integrating into kind of the automotive area?
Yeah, I had some slides on NFC, near-field communications in car keys, for example. Took that out for brevity, and there's a lot of stuff I'm still waiting to see pop up. Everybody's in the space all of a sudden as of second half, as you know, doing serious trials. Not the previous 3 years of trials that I guess weren't serious. Now all of a sudden everyone's doing serious NFC trials, near-field communications, using your phone or what I'm interested in, your car key as a payment device. BMW is perhaps the most aggressive on this from what I've seen, where they envision you using your car key as your payment device in conjunction with a phone or maybe not with a phone at all. So this puts the automakers into a fascinating stream of data that they've not been part of, like I showed you with Audi and with Toyota Entune, getting in the middle of the stream of their auto purchasers' behavior. And I think that is, it's probably going to go smartphone first. I think because the richness of the interface allows me to do a lot more interesting stuff with near field and wireless payment. But the car key has a place, certainly for access and control. I've seen demonstrations where in a hotel you go check in, your car key gets your hotel door, your room door, beamed to it. By the time you get up in the elevator, it's already programmed to open your room. It's already programmed to get you on a train. You wave it by a pad on the train. This is all happening in Europe, of course. But the idea is there to say the car key represents a certain amount of behavior, and outside of people who live in Manhattan, most of us aren't going to leave the house without the car key, the smartphone, or our clothes. The three things we would always notice immediately if we walk out the door. So that's why I think the car makers have a really interesting position. They're one of the things we always have with us, with the exception of a few metro markets where people don't drive much. We have any more here?
I have a last question for you.
Yes,
so
Nancy.
You've talked about mobile couponing, you've talked about near-field communication, you've talked about location-based services, you've talked about all of these different platforms within this new connected environment. I'm curious the ways in which you're seeing marketers interact within these environments in a unique way within the auto. Maybe if you could speak to an example of what a real marketing connection point within the car looks like.
Yeah. The car is still relatively untilled ground in this area. Most of the applications I've shown you are native organic apps. I don't recall offhand if Pandora is passing through their advertising onto the Entune system from Toyota, for example.
We can ask him coming up next.
Oh, right. Perfect. And I don't know if they're passing it through on the Sync mobile apps platform either, so that'll be a good data point to get from them. But this is an area right now where the ground is wide open for you guys to envision and to partner with the companies, many of which are going to be unfamiliar to you. The new layer of firms that are going to be the ones who answer that question with you are what are called first and second tier auto suppliers. Car makers don't make most of the parts in their cars anymore. They stopped doing that a couple decades ago. They buy everything from a company that creates the part, and they're basically just assemblers. It's kind of the Dell model. Dell doesn't make computers. Dell assembles parts that other people make to create computers. A fine difference, but an important one. The car makers are going the same way. So companies like Visteon, Denso, Delphi, Continental, they're known for tires, but they're huge in electronics. These are companies that are going to be creating the hardware that has the ability to do or not do the media things you envision. These are companies you want to get in discussions with. Shows like the Automotive World Congress in Detroit, put on by Automotive News, are where you might interface with people like that. And JD Power conferences and things like that to add to your experience like you do here with iMedia, to reach out to some different firms and find out what's going on. I want to voice what I want to do as a media company to you as a platform maker, because in the car space, much more than smartphones or tablets, it's a little more fixed. It's a little more long-term development. They have 3 to 4 year product leads still on a lot of these products, these actual devices that let you do things like get your media into the dash. So you're going to need to have a little more of a relationship with hardware makers, is my hunch, than now, where it's like, okay, Apple made a base. I don't really care what they did. I had no voice in it anyway, but I've got a software kit and I can go create an app. You're going to want to be a little more up funnel involved in the car space. It's just the nature of that business. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. And again, those links are on that Facebook page. Thank you.